Revenge with Karen.
The CFO's laughter echoed through the glass walls like a crowbar through a windshield. One more week and we're done, folks. Let's not screw it up now. Champagne was already chilling in the executive fridge. Michelle, seated 6 desks away, quietly moved a flagged document into the secure review folder. Final phase. Last compliance pass. The digital heartbeat of a $480 million acquisition, steady, silent, and ticking because of her. He didn't look up. She never did. 5 years she'd been in that corner, same second-hand monitor, same ergonomic chair nobody adjusted since Bush was in office. She wore her silence like Kevlar. While the execs spun in their ego chairs arguing over which investor dinner had the better truffle risotto, Michelle rewired their risk matrix to pass overseas audit. While procurement fumbled a vendor contract, she rewrote it in 6 hours flat to meet disclosure laws in both jurisdictions. No spotlights, no trophies, just the slow, unglamorous mechanics of not screwing things up. The funny thing about being essential is no one really notices until the wheels fall off. Michelle had built the data room that housed every material disclosure for this deal, structured the attestation flow, aligned the sequence of signatures like a safe cracker setting tumblers. And at the bottom of that long, ugly tower of legalese sat one thing nobody else touched: the Keystone signature. Hers, cryptographically tied, time-locked, immutable. Most people didn't even know the red card existed. One of those badge smart cards with tamper-proof firmware. Assigned solely to Michelle through internal policy 38C, buried halfway through the compliance manual no one had opened in years. It was designed to fire the final bullet, her token, her passphrase, and her identity, all required to release escrow and authenticate the entire merger packet. "Michelle, you coming to the pre-close dinner?" Someone asked from over the cubicle wall, voice chipper with performative camaraderie. It was Jenna from HR, the same one who'd forgotten to include her in the last 2 raises. Michelle smiled without turning. "Got a few things to finish up." She always did. Speaking of which, hey, if you've made it this far and you haven't tapped that little subscribe button yet, consider it your way of buying us a coffee or a revenge-flavored espresso. It keeps this circus running, and if you hit like, that tells the team we're doing something right. Now back to Michelle, the compliance ghost you'd overlook, right up until your $480 million starts melting. Her manager, Lance, was already checked out. Mid-40s, Rolex tan line, and the permanent expression of a man who hadn't read a policy doc since the Obama years. Been skipping risk committee calls for 2 weeks now, barking just make sure the numbers add up. Over Teams before muting himself to shop for golf clubs. He didn't understand keystones, attestations, or digital seals. He understood performance bonuses. And Michelle? She wasn't part of his calculation. "You staying late again?" asked Chris from finance. "The place is about to pop champagne." Michelle shrugged. "Can't celebrate what's not signed." What she didn't say was this: one misplaced compliance signature, and the deal's legal foundation would fold faster than a lawn chair at a hurricane party. What she also didn't say: she was tired. Tired of being overlooked, used, and occasionally thrown under the bus when something technical went wrong. But she wasn't bitter. Yet. She remembered building that Keystone protocol after the Singapore audit nearly cost them the Shell subsidiary. She remembered how legal had argued about redundancy. Just let an EVP sign off in emergencies, but she'd stood firm. No redundancy on the Keystone. One signer, one chain of custody, or we're exposed, they agreed, quietly, in writing, and promptly forgot it existed. Everyone was too busy decorating PowerPoints for the buyer to notice how much risk had been offloaded onto her loan desk. And maybe that was fine. Michelle didn't need fanfare. But part of her, deep down, buried under NDA fatigue and espresso-fueled nights, wished someone had noticed. Just once. Not for flair, not for flash. Just for being the one who caught the clause that prevented a 3-country lawsuit, or the one who fixed the sourcing flow before regulators flagged it. But she knew how this played out. The deal would close, execs would toast themselves, and Michelle? She'd get a half-hearted thank you in a quarterly all-hands call, mispronounced, forgotten, and ignored. What she didn't know yet was that by Monday morning, the same people toasting would be tripping over each other in panic, because someone was about to light the fuse. And the Keystone? Still in her drawer. Friday morning started with a lie. Michelle had just finished updating the signature chain's spreadsheet when Jenna from HR waddled over, flanked by a security guy built like a vending machine. Hi, Michelle, Jenna chirped, voice honeyed and trembling like a church mom about to ruin someone's life. Can we have a quick chat in the small conference room? Michelle blinked once, twice. That voice, the tight smile, the clipboard clutched like a crucifix, triggered something primal. She saved her work without answering and stood, heart already halfway out the fire escape. Inside Conference B, the blinds were shut. The room smelled like someone tried to cover up microwaved salmon with Glade spray. Michelle sat. Jenna closed the door with the solemnity of a priest zipping up a body bag. We've completed a review, Jenna began, sliding a manila folder across the table like it was a murder weapon. It appears you've violated our employee code of conduct. Section 12.4, the Moonlighting clause. Michelle didn't speak. She didn't need to. She just stared at the folder, waiting for the punchline. Jenna opened it. Inside, 3 screenshots of Michelle's Etsy shop. Digital planners, cute fonts, calendars, a passion project updated twice a month if she had time between fixing global compliance blind spots and reminding legal not to CC the wrong stakeholders. Jenna's voice dropped as if her own conscience had started screaming from a locked basement. Selling digital products, even if not competitive, without disclosure is grounds for termination. Michelle blinked again. That's what this is? Jenna stiffened. Clear violation. You failed to register the business with HR, and that puts us at risk. Risk. The word landed like a joke made at a funeral. Michelle, whose entire job revolved around mitigating billion-dollar exposures, was being canned over a $3.99 productivity PDF with a cat on the cover. No warning. No conversation, Michelle said quietly. Not a question, just the facts. Jenna coughed. Given the timing of the acquisition, leadership decided immediate action was best. Michelle leaned back. Through the glass, she saw her manager, Lance, watching from the hallway. Arms crossed, smug grin plastered across his spray-tanned face like a kid watching ants fry under a magnifying glass. Then came the sentence. The one that would repeat in Michelle's head for weeks, months. You have 10 minutes to box your desk, Jenna said, rising. Moonlighters don't get bonuses. And just like that, it was done. Security escorted her back to her desk. No exit interview, no chance to speak. The office had already been warned, it seemed. Eyes avoided her. Whispers stirred behind ergonomic monitors. Someone snapped her nameplate off before she even got back to her chair. Michelle opened her bottom drawer, pulled out a single banker's box, and started loading her things with robotic efficiency. No tears, no rage, just clinical silence. Paused briefly over a sticky note from an old project manager. Couldn't have done this without you, Em, seriously. She folded it and placed it on top of her charger cord. Then came the last item, the red card, still in its case, still pristine. She held it for a moment, ran her thumb across the embossed serial code. The weight of it, not just the plastic, but the significance, pressed into her palm like a choice. Across the floor, Lance chuckled at something on his, probably texting his golf buddies about how he'd cleaned house before the buyer landed. Michelle didn't look at him, didn't say a word. Instead, she walked past legal, past the shared printer station, past the sad little kitchenette that always smelled like burnt Keurig and someone's tuna salad. She reached the locked document archive, opened the final binder, the one meant for Monday's signing, and slid the red card inside, right between the audit summary and the attestation queue. No one noticed. Not yet, but they would. She closed the binder, turned on her heel, and left the building without saying goodbye. She didn't scream, didn't threaten lawsuits, didn't send a long, bitter email to all staff with bullet points about Lance's incompetence or HR's hypocrisy. She just left. And somewhere, beneath the white noise of office politics and cheap backstabbing, something ancient started humming. Systems she built didn't care about politics. They just needed a signature, hers. The box was heavier than it looked, mostly from the silence packed between old notebooks, USB sticks, and 5 years of loyalty turned into office detritus. Michelle walked out the side door of the building because it felt less theatrical. She didn't want a scene. She wanted an ending. A clean one, if possible. She made it halfway to the parking lot before she stopped. Breath clouded the glass of her old Civic as she stood there holding the banker's box. She opened the back door and gently placed it on the seat. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her badge. Not the standard one, the red one. The Keystone. It was smaller than a credit card and maybe twice as dangerous. Most people didn't know this thing existed, let alone what it did. It wasn't meant to be seen. It was part of a closed cryptographic loop, identity, a station escrow trigger. the final step in a complex ballet of compliance choreography. Michelle had engineered it herself, years ago, when legal panicked over dual jurisdiction regulations and a client demanded irrefutable human verification. Michelle had delivered a protocol so airtight it made the CFO weep. A real tear. She'd seen it. And now that Keystone was still tied, legally, technically, immutably to her, her badge, her name, her private key, anyone else trying to use it would get flagged, logged, and bounced like a toddler at a credit union. She rolled it between her fingers. One option, keep it. Let the entire thing grind to a halt. Watch Lance spiral and HR scramble to resurrect policies they never understood. Let the deal collapse. Let them taste the ash of their own arrogance. The other, return it. Let the machine chew forward without her, like she never mattered. But there was a third option, and she'd built for herself quietly, when she realized how easily good work was buried under bad egos. Not revenge, not sabotage, just clarity. She walked back into the building. No one noticed her return. It was Friday, and most of the floor was half drunk on the idea of early dismissal. The front desk was empty. The badge reader still recognized her. No termination ticket had been processed yet in the system, sloppy work from HR, as usual. She moved like a ghost. Legal suite was dim, blinds drawn for privacy, even though the only thing happening inside was two interns watching March Madness highlights. Michelle didn't stop. She headed straight for the secure binder shelf, pulled out the final signing packet, the one labeled Closeout Binder A1, Merge Co-Acquisition. She opened it to the last section, Final Escrow Trigger plus Audit Attestations. Her signature block stared back at her like a loaded gun. She took the red badge and slid it into the keyed authentication slot embedded in the back cover of the binder. The light on the badge blinked once, green. Her credentials locked in, time-stamped, authenticated, but incomplete. A signature was still needed, her signature. That final input, as per Clause 14b, had to come live from her while she was still employed, which, as of 10 minutes ago, she wasn't. No workarounds, no overrides. Made damn sure of that when she designed the system. She closed the binder without signing, left the red badge inside, cradled like a grenade with the pin halfway pulled. Then she took out a pen, not the cheap company ones that always died mid-sentence, but her own metal-click pentel, and scribbled a note on the sticky pad meant for legal memos. Your Keystone's present, but not active. Good luck Monday. She placed it on the binder's cover and walked out. No one stopped her. The elevator, someone got in on the third floor and nodded. Hey Michelle, they said, distracted, scrolling their phone. She nodded back. The doors closed. Floor by floor, the machine hummed. On the ground floor, she stepped into the lobby and walked past the framed photos of grinning executives. The new HR poster was already up. Integrity matters. Report violations anonymously. Michelle didn't laugh. She didn't need to. The system would do it for her come Monday. Out in the parking lot, the sun had dipped behind a concrete skyline. She didn't look back. This wasn't revenge. This was math. This was process. This was gravity. And they were about to feel all three. The glass doors swung open at 2:03 p.m. sharp. The buyer's team had arrived, all tailored suits and polished smiles, wheeling in 2 silver carts stacked with Veuve Cliquot and branded merch like they were hosting the office version of the Oscars. Photographer trailed behind them, snapping candids of legacy moments and pretending to not hate his life. Lance was already in the lobby, practically vibrating with self-importance. He stuck out his hand to greet the buyer's lead, a man named Richard, call me Rick Marston, Harvard ring, bone-white teeth, and the kind of handshake that screamed midlife crisis wrapped in a Rolex. Behind Rick stood a compact woman with a steel tablet and zero time for small talk. Chapatel, she said crisply, General Counsel. Let's move. The champagne flutes were passed out, the conference room was prepped, and a company intern was dispatched to bring in the branded cupcakes from the breakroom freezer. Someone even plugged in one of those tiny Bluetooth speakers to play Here Comes the Sun like it was a royal wedding. Legal lined up the binders like sacred scrolls. All that was left was signatures, 28 of them to be exact, each meticulously placed, cross-referenced, color-coded, and labeled with post-its so bright they could land planes. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. Halfway through binder A1, right after the overseas disclosures and just before the escrow verification pages, Asha froze. Her finger hovered above the page. Where's the Keystone? She asked. Lance was mid-toast. What's that? He asked, blinking. Asha glanced sideways at her tablet. Final cryptographic validation. Red badge signer. should have been handled before escrow triggers. Legal associate #3 Jonah, sweating through his shirt, quickly flipped the binder to the last section. The place Michelle had touched just hours ago. And there it was, the card, still seated, still blinking green, still unclaimed. Here it is, Jonah offered, relief cracking his voice. Asha stared. No, it's present. But it's not signed. This card requires biometric unlock plus live signature authentication. Lance raised an eyebrow, smiling. Can't someone from legal just use it? No, Asha said, more to the room than to him. Clause 14b. Now the name had weight. Everyone shifted. The photographer lowered his camera. Jonah flipped through the clause packet, panic in his pupils. It says here the Keystone signer must be an active, salaried employee at the time of signature. No exceptions, no proxies, no delegation authority. Silence. Asha looked up. Where's Michelle Carter? Jenna from HR coughed. She's been offboarded. When? Earlier today, Jenna said, visibly shrinking. Asha blinked once. You fired your Keystone signer the day of signature. She violated the Moonlighting clause, Jenna added, though it sounded more like a question than a fact. Rick, call me Rick. Marston leaned back in his chair, the smile on his face peeling slowly like paint in a fire. So the escrow can't release? No, Asha said flatly. Not unless Michelle signs live, which she can't, because someone flushed your protocol designer down the HR toilet. Lance stammered. Can't we override it? She already authenticated the card. She authenticated presence, Asha interrupted. Not execution. That's the failsafe. You know, so a disgruntled VP doesn't sign off after someone's walked. In the hallway, you could hear the HVAC click on, that quiet hum of building infrastructure trying to mask the sound of imminent collapse. Rick looked at his watch. Wire was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. The escrow triggers at 4:15. You've got a 2-hour window to fix this or the transfer is voided. And if it's voided, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Asha closed the binder like she was sealing a coffin. Either Michelle signs it live or your whole compliance flow is invalid. Lance looked at Jenna. Jenna looked at legal. Legal looked like they wanted to tunnel into the drywall. And the card just kept blinking. Green, patient, waiting, mocking. Somewhere outside, Michelle was probably watering her plants or watching a true crime doc, completely silent while the machine she'd built began to choke on its own arrogance. The dread started in Lance's stomach, a slow, sour coil of something he couldn't delegate, couldn't gaslight, couldn't PowerPoint away. Because no one could fake Michelle. And Monday was coming. The champagne started sweating before anyone in the room did. Then the air turned cold. The buyer's legal team stopped the signing process completely. Laptops snapped shut. Binders closed with the kind of finality that felt more like a guillotine than a pause button. Asha folded her arms and looked directly at the head of legal like she was evaluating a witness about to perjure themselves. Who authorized the removal of the Keystone signer? She asked. Legal turned to HR, who had been doing their best to blend into the ergonomic furniture. Jenna blinked like a deer in front of an oncoming class action lawsuit. Michelle was in violation of Section 12.4, Jenna said. Moonlighting policy. She had an Etsy shop. Asha's nostrils flared slightly. An Etsy shop, she repeated flatly. Legal's internal lead, Morris, leaned forward. Was this shop related to our sector or competing IP? Jenna hesitated. No, it was, digital planners. Calendar PDFs. Was she warned? No, Jenna admitted. It was a zero-tolerance clause. She was terminated on discovery. Asha turned to the buyer's technical compliance officer, who was already pulling up archived VPN logs and access reports on a tablet. Did she log into Etsy from company property? Nope, he said, scrolling fast. No logins on corporate networks. No access from her company laptop. No security triggers tied to Etsy domains. Closest thing was a flagged VPN ping, but even that looks like a false positive. It matches her personal device's MAC address outside work hours. So, Asha said slowly, you fired the architect of your escrow validation system based on a flagged Etsy link from a personal device. During off hours, with no actual policy breach, the day she was required to finalize a $480 million transaction. Jenna's face went white. Legal's face went red. Rick, call me Rick stood up and paced toward the windows. Do you people understand what's at stake here? The wire is prepped. The board has been briefed. Our regulatory disclosures were queued for 5 p.m. EST. And you let someone nuke your signature chain because of a freaking PDF side hustle. Lance tried to chime in. Look, she was always kind of intense. It felt risky keeping someone like that around during the close. Asha turned to him slowly, blinking. Risky? Lance cleared his throat. She kept things too tightly controlled. It made us uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Asha repeated, this time almost whispering. You mean, secure? From the back of the room, someone from IT leaned in toward Morris and murmured something. He went pale. What? Asha asked, eyes narrowing. There was a flag in the internal report, Morris said reluctantly. The Etsy link wasn't flagged by security. It was manually submitted through the anonymous policy portal. But the metadata wasn't stripped. The ticket was submitted from Lance's IP. Silence fell like a blackout curtain. Rick turned. You filed the complaint, Lance sputtered. I was doing due diligence. We're all supposed to flag possible compliance risks. You filed the complaint, Rick repeated. Your own team member. The one person this entire deal hinges on. Asha looked at Morris again. Can we legally proceed without her? No, Clause 14b is binding. It's the only pathway for final validation. She wrote it that way, so where is she? Rick asked. Jenna opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't say. Asha leaned back, scanning the room like a chess master studying a board made of cowards and fools. Well, until Michelle returns, willingly signs the validation, this acquisition is suspended. The escrow cannot release. Our lawyers are drafting an internal event disclosure now. If this collapses, your company will be listed as the reason. Rick added, and trust me, the press won't call it an Etsy scandal. They'll call it operational negligence. The projector screen still displayed the signature page. Michelle's name glared from the screen, crisp and undeniable. Below it, a blinking cursor. Waiting. Stuck in time. Back at her desk, someone had found the post-it note she'd left on the binder. It made the rounds quietly, like contraband. Your Keystone's present, but not active. Good luck Monday. Words started to spread, whispers in the hallway, glances at Lance's office. Did you hear? She had that thing locked up like Fort Knox. They say she built the whole flow. Clause 14b, that was hers. She didn't even take her coffee mug. By 3:15, internal Slack channels had gone silent. Someone tried tagging Michelle. User not found. The systems she'd built were holding. They weren't failing. They were doing exactly what she told them to do, protect the company from itself. And now, they were doing it perfectly. By 3:42 p.m., the deal room had turned into a war bunker. The buyer's team stopped drinking. The branded cupcakes were still frozen in the break room freezer. The once chipper conference room now smelled like sour sweat and expensive disappointment. Laptops lined the table, all open to different pages of the same thing, the merger agreement. Specifically, Clause 14b. It wasn't flashy. No bold fonts or legal fireworks. Just a simple paragraph on page 312, sandwiched between indemnification language and audit triggers. Keystone signature provision. The final escrow validation must be executed by the original architect of the attestation flow, designated in Schedule IA as Keystone signer. This individual must be an active, salaried employee at the time of execution. No substitutions permitted. No automation override. Digital validation requires live biometric confirmation through a signed credential badge. Violation of these terms renders the escrow sequence invalid. One sentence, 52 words, the legal equivalent of a tripwire, and it was hers. Michelle had written it during the second draft review with buyer counsel, back when nobody cared what compliance architects did. The clause had passed through 2 rounds of red lines, reviewed by a paralegal who likely assumed it was boilerplate. Schedule IA listed Michelle Carter as the Keystone signer. No one changed it. No one questioned it, because no one ever questions the quiet woman taking notes in the corner. Now that sentence was eating them alive. Lance had stopped pretending to be calm. His forehead glistened under the harsh ceiling lights as he paced in tight circles, muttering phrases like we didn't know and how bad could it be. His shirt was coming untucked. One of his loafers squeaked. CFO had locked himself in the adjacent call room and was dialing outside counsel with the speed of a man trying to put out a house fire using bottled water. Morris from legal pulled his glasses off and cleaned them for the 5th time in 2 minutes. You said she was terminated cleanly, he snapped at Jenna. She was. Jenna protested, fingers trembling as she flipped through a printed copy of the employee handbook. It's a clear clause. Side businesses, undisclosed. Grounds for immediate termination. We had to act. Morris leaned in. So you fired the one person with the credentialed ability to execute our escrow trigger. Because of a digital sticker store, she was selling PDFs. Exactly, he hissed. And now the buyer's counsel has flagged potential bad faith behavior. That's not just a pause, that's exposure. Down the hall, IT pinged legal with a new development. The Slack export. Michelle's name had shown up in 3 direct message threads the night before her termination, all from Lance. Messages like, she won't fight it, too quiet, one less bonus payout to split, I'm cleaning house before close, just like they wanted, time-stamped, retrieved, preserved, and now duplicated in a secure archive under an automated retention tag Michelle herself had built 3 years ago during a policy overhaul no one had cared about. HR panicked. Jenna tried to delete her chat logs with Lance. Too late, the archive was locked, permanent, immutable metadata attached. Created by Michelle Carter. System rule, all high-level personnel Slack messages flagged by compliance policy get saved under litigation hold for 3 years. The script was still active. Even fired, Michelle's code was working harder than most employees. At 4:08 p.m., the CFO re-emerged, visibly shaken. Asking for formal notice of breach, he said. If we can't validate the escrow today, they'll report us for material delay. That triggers SEC review. Rick from the buyer's team leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. You've got 45 minutes. Lance straightened. I'll call her. No, Rick snapped. You won't. Asha added, you flagged her. You orchestrated this. We'll reach out. Jenna stood, pale and shaking. She won't answer anyone. She didn't even say goodbye. Said everything she needed to, Asha replied, flipping the binder closed. She wrote the rulebook. You just never bothered to read it. The air was thick now, not with noise, but with the weight of realization. They hadn't just fired a compliance officer. They'd fired their failsafe. And Michelle hadn't stormed out, hadn't shouted, hadn't even flinched. She just slipped the pin back into the grenade and left it in a binder, blinking quietly in Legal's lap. The Keystone was still there, but she wasn't. By 4:29 p.m., the buyers were gone. Not with drama, not with slammed doors or threats. Just a quiet conversation between Rick and Asha by the window, followed by a short handshake with the CFO and a single sentence. We'll resume when your signer returns. Then they wheeled the champagne back out, unopened. The cupcake stayed frozen. And the silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was surgical. The kind of silence that cuts. Internal audit team was already in triage mode, led by Dinesh from risk management, who hadn't been invited to the champagne toast, but was now everyone's best friend. He and his team had traced the anonymous tip that started this whole mess. Someone had submitted a code of conduct violation complaint about Michelle's Etsy shop through the internal compliance portal. The complaint had been scrubbed of identifying info. At least, that's what the sender thought. The metadata didn't lie. Dinesh pulled up the log file and projected it in Legal's conference room. It was a plain JSON string, no glitter, no fanfare. Just a single line that cracked everything open. Origin IP, 10.21.44.3 device ID, CCE7F9 LanceMGR submission timestamp, 0742, 13 Lance's work laptop. His office IP. His user profile. Room held its breath. Jenna blinked hard. There must be a mistake. There's no mistake, Dinesh said. The compliance portal logs everything, even when it's supposed to be anonymous. Michelle helped build it. That's why it's airtight. Across the table, legal senior counsel Morris closed his binder and stared straight at Lance. Did you flag your own team member for side work so she'd be fired? Lance scoffed. I was following policy. You all said moonlighting was a risk. No one said fire the woman holding the Keystone, Morris snapped. Especially not the one with the clause that makes this whole deal legally viable. Dinesh pulled up a second file, a compensation policy PDF from last fiscal year. Highlighted in yellow was a specific clause. In the event of personnel reassignment or termination within 30 days of acquisition close, allocated signing bonuses may be redistributed among remaining senior team members at the discretion of the department lead. Legal cross-referenced the timestamp of Michelle's termination with the bonus pool spreadsheet, and there it was. Line 14, reallocation candidate L. Weather's projected increase, $112,000. Morris leaned back in his chair. You fired her for a 6-figure bonus. Lance tried to laugh, but it came out like a cough. Twisting this, she was difficult. Paranoid. She didn't collaborate. A voice cut in from the doorway. It was Chris from finance. Quiet guy. The kind who never said anything unless it was about spreadsheets or vendor tax codes. Now he stepped into the room, holding a folder. Michelle built the attestation waterfall from scratch. She reverse-engineered 2 overlapping systems just to satisfy a conflict check from the EU side. She caught a reporting bug in our vendor tracking system 3 weeks ago that would have stalled this whole deal for a month. Chris opened the folder. Inside was a printed email. Michelle had forwarded it to legal on March 12th. Subject: Keystone signature execution, just confirming the clause is locked and the signer protocol is unalterable. Please ensure no changes are made without documented internal review. It had a read receipt from legal. Orris' initials were there. She knew. She had locked the gate herself, and she had warned them. Back in the conference room, the red card still sat in its protective shell. Authenticated, time-locked, staring back like a tiny, silent judge. Jenna swallowed hard. Can't we force reset it? Reassign the credential? Morris shook his head. No, it's tied to her biometrics. You override that, you break compliance. Buyer walks. We get sued for breach. If she refuses to come back. Someone muttered. Asha, still seated, didn't even look up from her phone. Then the acquisition dies, and your firm dies with it. A pin dropped somewhere. Maybe a thought. Maybe what was left of Lance's credibility. The red card blinked. Still green. Still waiting. At 4:43, Rick's assistant sent an email to the board. Subject: Acquisition close delayed signature protocol issue per clause 14b. Escrow validation is blocked pending signer verification. Awaiting resolution. Across the company, word leaked. Not through press releases or memos, through the old ways. Slack pings, side eyes, quiet hallway whispers. Michelle had been pushed. Quietly, strategically, for money, for ego. And she'd left without a scream, without a threat, without even taking her backup charger. Because she didn't need to. The red card was louder than all of them. Michelle was sitting at her kitchen table, barefoot, a chipped mug of lukewarm chamomile in one hand and her cat purring like a broken fan against her leg when the call came. Blocked number. She let it ring once, twice, then hit decline. Whoever it was could leave a voicemail. She was done. Done being the fixer, the ghost, the silent scaffolding holding up corporate clowns who couldn't read a clause if it were stapled to their face. But the phone lit up again. Same number. No name, she sighed, answered, and said nothing. Miss Carter, a woman's voice, clear, clipped, all control and velvet threat. This is Asha Patel, General Counsel for Merge Co. Michelle waited. I want to start by acknowledging what was done to you was improper, and frankly, dangerous. Still, Michelle said nothing. Just leaned back, sipped her tea, and let the silence stretch like a warning. Asha filled it. We've reviewed your work, your protocol. Clause 14b. Attestation flows. The compliance architecture. You didn't just design the signature process, you designed the entire spine of the acquisition. Without you, this deal doesn't close. Michelle finally spoke. Then I guess it's not closing. Unless you come back, Asha said plainly. Michelle chuckled once, dry, unamused. You want me to rejoin the same team that flagged me for selling cat-themed productivity PDFs? No, Asha said, and Michelle could hear the shift in tone. Lower. Serious? We want you to join our team. As lead compliance officer overseeing the merger from our side. Board-level access. Direct reporting to me and the buyer's executive panel. Michelle blinked. Asha continued, the previous leadership on your side, Lance Weathers, Jenna Toland, are being removed, effective immediately. The buyers have stipulated that their continued presence would jeopardize the deal. And the escrow, still frozen. Still awaiting your signature. Badge is authenticated but inactive. No one else can move the process forward. Michelle swirled the tea in her mug, watching the dregs spiral like a drain. Why me? Because you didn't just design a protocol, Asha said. You built a firewall against corruption. And they walked right into it. And what else? Michelle asked. I assume you're not calling to offer me a plaque. A pause, equity, 6-figure signing bonus, and a contract with a golden parachute clause. One buries your name again. You become the point person for post-merger compliance. You answer to no one but me and the board. Michelle let that sink in. No politics, no Lance. No HR gremlins quoting out-of-context policy. Just the clean, surgical silence of power. Put it in writing, she said finally. And before I sign anything, I want confirmation Lance is out. Jenna too, I want it in writing. Signed, not a handshake. Already done, Asha replied. Jenna was asked to resign. Lance has been suspended pending investigation and clawback of his projected bonus. You'll receive digital copies of both HR statements within the hour. Michelle stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the street buzzed like it always did, impatient, uncaring. But inside, something shifted. For the first time in years, she didn't feel expendable or invisible. She felt chosen. The cat meowed like it was bored with the drama. Michelle scratched its head absently. "Fine," she said. "Send me the damn paperwork. You'll have it in 10 minutes." The call ended, no fanfare, just a deadline and a full-circle return. Michelle set her mug down and walked to the back room. Opened the fireproof box where she kept her secondary authentication kit. Fingerprint scanner, badge backup, secure tablet. All the things she was never paid to carry, but had anyway. Just in case. Just in case they underestimated her. Again, she powered up the tablet. The screen glowed. Escrow validation pending, signer, Michelle Carter, status. Awaiting live biometric input, a single blinking cursor, patient and precise like the eye of a gun. She didn't press it yet. First, she opened her inbox and waited for the 2 files confirming the purges. They arrived in under 6 minutes. Subject, Leadership Transition Confirmation Attachments. 8 Char-Term Weathers PDF. Char-Term Tolan PDF. She opened both. Read every line, smiled once, barely. Then finally she clicked the signature field. The badge blinked once. Green, verified, active. And with that, the escrow lock cracked open. The machine whirred back to life, but not without remembering who flipped the switch. Monday morning came wearing its funeral clothes. The lights in the main conference room buzzed too loud, like even the fixtures were anxious. Suits filled every chair, buyers, board members, legal, HR, finance. Nobody touched the catered pastries. No one even acknowledged the cold brew station someone had optimistically rolled in. This wasn't a celebration anymore. This was a reckoning. At 9:01 a.m. sharp, Morris from legal stood at the front with a clicker in hand and a grimace stitched into his face. Behind him, a 72-inch screen lit up with a presentation no one wanted to be part of. Slide 1, Acquisition Timeline Delayed. Slide 2, Escrow Protocol Inactive. Slide 3, Clause 14B Keystone Signature Enforcement. Slide 4, Personnel Actions Under Investigation. Slide 5, Credential Authenticated, Signer Unavailable, and finally, Slide 6, Visual Aid, Red Keystone Badge. The room stared at it. A photo of the card. The same one that had sat idle in a binder all Friday afternoon, glowing faintly while grown men panicked and a multi-million-dollar deal flatlined. Morris cleared his throat. "This," he said, pointing to the image, "is the Keystone Badge, a hardware signature device tied to a biometric protocol, assigned solely to one employee. It is the final validator for the escrow sequence." He clicked the next slide. A document appeared, Schedule IA Signer of Record, Michelle Carter. Morris scanned the room. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You fired her?" The silence was total. Then, a rustle near the side of the room, the door cracked open. Michelle walked in, not in a power suit, not in revenge red, just in dark jeans, a slate gray jacket, and the calm of someone who had already won and didn't need anyone to clap. Every eye turned. Asha stood from the buyer's side and extended a hand. "Miss Carter, welcome." Michelle shook it once, then stepped to the head of the table. No introduction. No performance. Just a simple nod to Morris, who clicked one last slide. Slide 7, Status Update, Keystone Signature, Verified, Escrow Unlocked, Deal Cleared. "Rick, call me Rick." Marston grinned at his team. "Resume the wire, it's done." A whisper rolled through the room like dry thunder. Michelle didn't sit. She didn't speak. She just opened the leather folder in front of her and began reviewing the onboarding brief for her new role. Title: Executive Compliance Officer. Urge Co-Integration Access Level. Board Reporting Line. Direct to GC Equity. Vested Contract Status. Active at the far end of the table, Lance looked like a man being gently escorted out of his own dream. The head of security approached him with a folder in one hand and a badge collector in the other. "Mr. Weathers," the man said quietly, "you're being relieved. Please gather your personal items." Lance sputtered. "This is a mistake. I've been with this company for 15 years. You're no longer with it now," Asha said, without looking up from her tablet. The door clicked shut behind him 30 seconds later. Michelle didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't even breathe differently. She had nothing to prove. The system she built had proven it for her. The meeting continued. Quiet. Focused. No one interrupted her as she flipped through contracts, flagged paragraphs, annotated protocols. Same woman they deemed too intense, not a team player, difficult, now wielded the authority they could no longer fake. The badge had made her essential, but her silence had made her irreplaceable. Across the room, Jenna's seat was conspicuously empty. Her resignation had processed at 7:02 a.m. Nobody mentioned her. Michelle signed the final board integration log at 9:44 a.m. stamped it, closed the binder, then turned to Morris. "Let's get to work," she said, and that was all. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.